So thank you so much for joining me today, John. I'm super excited, super grateful to be here in Auckland with you for this interview. You are one of the most amazing thought leaders around the world in the area of human psychology, peak performance, relationships, business, wealth creation. The thing that astounds me most about what you've been able to do in your lifetime so far, we're still getting started, right, is the fact that you've not only read over 30,000 books, but you've published over 40 books yourself, and that is just incredible. The first question that I had for you for this interview was going back to the very first opportunity that I had to hear you present, which was at Emily Gower's Inspiration Bible Gala dinner. And that was an amazing night. And I knew you were keynoting, but I had no idea what an effect that your keynote was going to have on me that night. The first thing I'd love for you to tell a story around was the most painful experience you've gone through that's turned out to be a blessing earlier on when you were younger that's made a profound impact in who you are today. Can you share that story with us today?
The story from learning?
Yeah, that was the one that really got me.
Well, I was born with my foot turned in and my hand turned in. So I guess the way I was positioned or something, I had a twisted arm and leg.
Sure.
And had to wear braces on my leg and on my arm, and until I was 4. And you know, when you're a young child and kids see you in these braces, they don't know what to do with you. They kind of avoid you. And I wanted to be out of those braces. And so I had a desire to be free. And I think being constrained, you want to be free. And I think that had an impact on my travels, my desire to travel the world.
Yeah, of course.
Probably. I'm assuming, but I have a feeling that's had an impact. I also had speech problems, and I was going to a speech therapist or whatever from a very young age.
Yes.
By the time I got into first grade and tried elementary school, I tried reading, and it wasn't working. And so the teacher put me into first reading, normal reading, and then into a remedial reading, and finally, with a guy named Darryl Dalrymple, we had to sit and face the window with a dunce cap on. So in the 1950s, we had dunce caps. And she used to say that until you decide to read, you'll sit here. If you decide to read, then you can come back in the circle. But I just, no matter what I did, I couldn't do it. I didn't have meaning. I didn't know how to spell. I reversed letters. I did all kinds of things. I made it through elementary school with the help of the smartest kids by asking them questions. And if it wasn't for that, I might not even made it through elementary school. Then my parents moved from Houston, Texas to Richmond, Texas when I was 12. And we were in a low socioeconomic area, and there was no smart kids. So I didn't have anybody to fall back on.
Sure.
And then I ended up failing and dropping out. So I left home at 13 and kind of lived on the streets, was a street kid, and I dropped out of school.
So you were literally homeless at this point?
Sort of. I mean, I hung out with friends, and I lived in a bowling alley.
Yeah,
24-hour bowling alley. I lived in a park. I lived in a car. I did all kinds of things. And eventually I took up surfing and at age 14. And I lived at the beach in Freeport, Texas. And then I took off that summer to go to California. And I went for California, and I hitchhiked through Mexico. And I was an adventurous, traveling young kid. And eventually I panhandled money and did some odd jobs and things and made enough money to fly to Hawaii.
Learned how to hustle.
Yeah. And I landed in Hawaii, and I went out to the North Shore, which is where I saw in all the surf movies, surf shows, surf magazines. I wanted to go out there. That's where the big waves were. So I first lived underneath a bridge at Kamehameha Highway on Sunset Beach. That got too noisy, and so I moved to a park, lived under a park bench. And from a park bench, I went to a bathroom when it rained, and then to an abandoned car, and finally into a tent. The guy had this tent complex. I lived in a tent, grass house kind of combination in the jungle. And I surfed every day. And I, was a surf guy. I surfed 11 hours a day. I was just totally dedicated to surfing at the time. I had long hair and a beard and the same thing you do in the 60s. And then I nearly died at 17 from strychnine cyanide poisoning from some of the things I was eating that I wasn't realizing was toxic. And I was found in my tent, nearly dead, led to a health food store. And at the health food store, I saw a little flyer on a door, said Sunset Recreation Hall, special guest speaker, Paul C. Bragg. I don't know why, but intuitively just said, I want to go listen to this guy. And I went to this one class one night where Paul Bragg spoke for 1 hour. And without a doubt, this one man in that 1 hour, that one night, with his one message, was speaking to me. And that was the first night after hearing him speak. He was very inspiring. He made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I could learn how to read, overcome my learning problems, and learn how to be intelligent. Mm-hmm. And I had a dream about being intelligent. It was there, but I never thought it was going to happen because I had no evidence of it. And everybody, the teacher said in first grade, I'll never read, I'll never write, I'll never communicate, never amount to thing, never go very far in life. So that night, he took us through this imagery meditation process. And I saw a vision of me speaking in front of 1 million people.
Wow.
And it was very inspiring. In fact, Andrew Tischler, a painter from Melbourne, Australia, has painted that, and it's in my office, a beautiful painting of me speaking in front of 1 million people. And that was the beginning of a new trajectory in my life. And that night, I set out on a dream to learn how to overcome my reading problems and learning problems, learn how to overcome my speaking problems, and become a speaker and teacher and travel the world. And I want to go to every country on the face of the earth and share.
Wow.
And so nearly 40, November will be 44 years.
Wow.
44 years later, I'm still working on it.
Yeah, so you sure are. That's exactly how your life looks right now.
I have full-time travel around the world doing what I set out to do. And I don't think I have anything else that I could do that's more inspiring to me. That's what I love doing. So
wow.
That's what I do.
So on that night, you had a vision of speaking in front of 1 million people. That is crazy. Because I know that when I took the plunge into starting the business of my dreams, which is winning international now, I'd kind of in the back of my mind built up this idea that this is what I want to do someday. When I was 15 years old, I was given an iPod from a mentor of mine at the golf course, and I had very tough teenage years with family issues and very low self-esteem. And he bought me this iPod, and he said, if you shoot this certain score on this day when I was playing golf, I'll buy you this iPod for your birthday. And ended up shooting the score. I couldn't believe it. I was super excited, and I get this iPod, and he loaded it up with a bunch of Tony Robbins, who I had no idea who it was at the time, tapes. And that kind of, for me, was the catalyst to going, okay, cool. I used to listen to him, and he got me out of a dark place. And that inspired me to want to go out there and become a thought leader and change lives myself, eventually when I had the courage to do it. What do you think enabled that vision how did that come out, that 1 million people in that vision that you had on that night at that seminar?
Well, Paul Bragg was a very inspiring guy. He helped initiate 1,000 health food stores in America.
Wow.
He wanted to make a difference in health in America. And just the guy was inspired. He was just an enthusiastic, inspired guy that if you met him, you would know. And but he said that we have a body, a mind, and soul. The body must be directed by the mind, the mind must be directed by the soul in order to maximize our human awareness and potential. And that we need to set goals for ourselves, our family, our community, our city, our state, our nation, our world, and beyond for 100 and 120 years. And nobody ever talked to me like this. And when he spoke to me, I saw new possibilities. I thought, well, maybe I could overcome my learning problems. That's the first night I ever thought I could learn to read.
Yeah, amazing.
And I don't know how to describe it. He was just an inspiring guy, and I saw that vision. Now, usually there's a thing called a dissociative identity disorder, where when you're traumatized by something, you can dissociate to survive it and go and create fantasies. It's possible that I had an inspired vision. It could be that I had a fantasy from the thought of me ever learning how to read. I don't know, but whatever it was, I saw the vision, and that vision has been carried me forward. And what's interesting is when I left Hawaii shortly after that, and I was inspired to want to go back and see my parents and go back to Texas. I flew back to Los Angeles from Honolulu, and I hitchhiked back to Texas. And when I got there, my mom didn't recognize me because I had long hair and a beard. And she said, "Oh my God, welcome home, son." And a few days later, she encouraged me to take a GED, a high school equivalency test.
Before asking you to have a shave?
Yeah, I didn't shave yet. And so I took this test, and I guessed, and I passed.
Wow.
And then she said, well, maybe take a college entrance exam. And I guessed, and I passed. And I thought, wow, because Paul Bragg told me to say, I told him I had a learning problem. He said, so say every single day for the rest of your life, I am a genius and I apply my wisdom. And never miss a day for the rest of your life. And sooner the cells of your body will tingle with it, so will the world. So I've never missed a day. I say it every single morning. I say it throughout the day. I'm a genius and I apply my wisdom. A genius is one who listens to their inner voice and follows the inner vision of their soul and obeys. basically. So I've been focusing on that. So I started saying that, and I guessed, and I passed these tests. And that was pretty cool. And I thought, oh, maybe this is making some sort of magical thing for me. And then I took my first college entrance class, and English and history. In the history class, I thought I was going to do okay. I thought I was going to do like the other test, but I bombed it. I got a 27. And I started thinking, maybe I can't do this after all. I started doubting it. And I thought, I'll never read, I'll never write, I'll never communicate, never amount to thing, never go very far in life. All my first grade teacher came back. And I was curled up in a fetal position under a Bible stand in my parents' house that day after I failed the test. And my mom came home and she saw me there and she said, what happened? And I said, Mom, I blew the test. I guess I don't have what it takes. And she looked at me and put her hand on my shoulder and she said, son, whether you become a great teacher and travel the world like you dream, whether you return to Hawaii and ride giant waves like you've done, or return to the streets and panhandle as a bum, I just want to let you know your father and I are going to love you no matter what. When she said that, that's a teary moment for me.
Of course.
And I felt loved, and my hand went into fist, and I looked up and I saw my vision again. I saw that vision of the million people. And I said, I'm going to master this thing called reading, I'm going to master this thing called studying and learning and teaching, and I'm going to do whatever it takes, I'm going to travel whatever distance, I'm going to pay whatever price to give my service of love across the planet. I'm not going to let any human being on the face of the earth, not even myself, stop me now. There was a point of no turning back. I hugged my mom and went in my room and I got a dictionary out and I started memorizing 30 words a day. And my mom helped me by making me recite the words, spell the words, put it in a sentence, make meaning out of it. And we grew my vocabulary 30 words a day until I got enough to pass school. And I started to excel after that. And I started reading encyclopedias. I read 8 complete sets of encyclopedias nonstop, just read. And I just started reading and reading and increasing my vocabulary. And then about months later, I was turning 19, and my mom said, what do you want for your birthday? And I went, the greatest teachings on the face of the earth, Mom, the greatest writings humanity's ever created. She said, sure you don't want a t-shirt?
Or a skateboard?
A skateboard? I said, no, I want to write the greatest writings, the greatest ideas from the greatest minds. She said, okay. So she just happened to have a brother who was a professor at MIT, who was a chemist and physicist, and he, as a gift, because he knew I had learning problems, he sent 2 giant 6x6 by 6 foot wooden crates on a flatbed truck to our house. And it was filled with books, thousands of books. And they put it down on the ground and I opened up with a crowbar and I filled my entire room with books. And I had this yoga mat in the center and I just did yoga and meditation. And I did that for 4 hours a day. And the rest of the time I read 18 to 20 hours a day. And I just read and read and read and read and read and just lived in thousands of books.
Wow. And
I guess I never stopped.
Yeah.
And then I started attracting students. I had my first student that I taught was a 365 pound Afro-American woman who wanted me to teach her yoga. Then I had a Persian man who wanted me to teach him meditation. Then 16 people asked me if I could teach him mathematics, and it kept growing. By the time I went to the University of Houston, I'd had 100, 150 people every day under the trees. I was teaching philosophy and stuff. And then I just continued it. From when I went to professional school, I taught every single night. And then when I got into practice, I taught pretty well every night. And I just never stopped. Just been teaching every day since.
Yeah, the thing that really stands out to me there was you mentioned that on that night where you went to that seminar with Paul, that you had this amazing vision come out, but on the same token it had come from a massive breakdown. It's like you're at the lowest that you've ever been, almost died. And then from that breakdown came this amazing breakthrough. So there was a blessing in disguise. And I know you talk about not having fantasies, but that fantasy in that case was actually an inspiring, productive fantasy.
Well, a fantasy, there's 3 kinds of fantasies.
Sure.
The first fantasy is something that you assume is a one-sided outcome.
Yes.
That you're going to have happy without sad, or pleasure without pain, or one positive without negative.
Yes.
The second fantasy is to expect yourself to do something that's not really according to your highest values. And the third one is something that's unplanned and unstrategized. And people sometimes set these fantasies up. In this case, I think it was aligned with my real values. Awesome. I think I really did want to learn.
Yeah, of course.
And it was achievable because it's humanly possible. And I did develop a strategy on how to do that. And first I did is I filled my mind with the greatest teachings on the face of the earth. And then I started to figure out how do I reach millions of people. And I didn't stop. And I did radio and television and newspaper. I mean, I've done, I don't know, 7,000 to 8,000 interviews over the years. And so I just constantly do reach people. So I'm a believer that it can be done. It's just a matter of doing what it takes.
Awesome. So it was because a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs and young, budding, passionate people that want to make a difference in the world or just make something of themselves, they have the outcome, so that fantasy vision without the vehicle established. So you had that fantasy outcome without the vehicle, and then the vehicle came because it was aligned with your true values.
Yeah, I think I was aligned, and when I failed that test and I made the decision that I was not going to let any human being stop me on the face of the earth, not even myself, there was a point where divine providence and human sovereignty met. And I felt that it was not an option. So when you have no turning back, no option, you're going forward. I think you synchronize things and you start having people, places, things, ideas, and events come into line to make things happen.
The thing that I really loved as well was when your mum put her hand on your shoulder and mentioned that she loved you no matter what, that enabled you to have the courage to set that vision and really cement it. So from love came more love, and then you've been spreading love throughout the world ever since. That's amazing.
Well, I believe that love is the essence of our existence.
Yeah.
And I believe that it's a catalyst, it's a growth factor. And I was told when I hitchhiked to California when I was 14, I got confronted by 3 cowboys in El Paso, Texas, that were the cowboys and surfers didn't get along. And when you're in El Paso, Texas with a headband, with sandals and a Hawaiian shirt, and you've got a surfboard, and you're hitchhiking through town in West Texas where there's nothing but cowboys, they don't like long-haired guys. So I was going to get beaten up by 3 cowboys in the streets there in El Paso. And I didn't know what to do, so I growled and barked at the guys and acted like a wild animal. And they weren't expecting that, and it decoyed them. And there was a guy on the corner leaning on a lamppost laughing at what I just did. And he couldn't believe that I confronted those cowboys. They were older.
I'd probably laugh as well.
He started laughing, and he came up to me and he put his arm on my shoulder as I was walking with my surfboard. He says, "Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" And I said, "Well, I don't drink coffee." He says, "Can I buy you a Coca-Cola?" And I said, "Sure." So this guy took me to this little malt shop with the swivel stools in a corner in El Paso, Texas. This is 1968. And he asked me if I was a runaway, and I said, "Well, sort of." And he said, "Are you going to California?" I said, "Yeah." We chatted. He says, "Are you through with your Coca-Cola?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, then come with me." And he took me to the downtown El Paso library, and we went through there, and I had to leave my surfboard and everything at the information desk. We walked in the library. He sat me down at a desk, and he went off to the bookshelves. He came back with 2 books and set them on the table. And then he turned and faced me in his chair. He said, "Son, there's 2 things I want to teach you, and I want you to promise me you'll never forget this." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Number 1, never judge a book by its cover." He said, "It can fool you." He says, "You'll probably think I'm some old guy on the street, some old bum on the street. But, young man, I'm one of the wealthiest men in the world. I have everything that money can buy. I've got ships and planes and businesses and homes, everything." He says, "But so never judge a book by its cover. It'll fool you." And number 2, and he grabbed my hand, he stuck them on top of the books. It was Plato and Aristotle. He says,
Wow.
"You learn how to read, boy. You learn how to read. Because there's only 2 things that can never take away from your life, and that is your love and your wisdom. So you gain the wisdom of love and the love of wisdom." Well, if you look at my cufflinks, what does it say?
Wisdom and love.
And love.
Amazing.
And so those 2 things have been with me, and they're the cornerstone of everything I do.
Awesome.
So I've done what I can to gain wisdom in life, and what I do to share love in life.
Awesome.
So that man turned out to be Howard Hughes.
Wow.
And I can say that was a very meaningful meeting, and it touched my life. He was there doing a El Paso natural gas deal for a brewery he was building, and I just happened to run into this guy. Little did I know that he was teaching me that great message.
It's amazing. So I was actually going to save this question until a little bit later on in the interview, but they're obviously both so essential: wisdom and love, knowledge, or your mind and your heart. If you had to choose one of the 2 to double your power of, to therefore go out and achieve your mission faster and help more people, which would you choose if you had to double the power of your heart or double the power of your mind, knowing that they're both important and you respect and appreciate both of them? Which would you choose?
Well, I always say that a perfectly equilibrated mind is what opens the heart.
Awesome.
And so you can't have the heart without the mind being in wisdom. So they're one and the same.
Sure.
As Swedenborg, the visionary, the mystic said, the sun gives light to the world, but the light is the wisdom and the warmth is the heart. And that's the love of the sun. Sure. And I say, if you want to be an enlightened sun, a star in the world, then you have to have the wisdom and love. They're inseparable. I don't see them as separable.
Sure. Awesome. Great answer. Thank you. Awesome. So obviously with the Demartini method, it's so based around your amazing discovery and study of axiology. Can you share with the guys that are listening and watching what axiology is and how it relates to the most commonly asked question that you've got with all the teaching and presenting that you've done?
Well, axiology is the study of values and worth, or value and worth.
Awesome.
In other words, anything that is valuable to you and something that's worth something to you is a value. So axiology is the study of that, and it drives all of human behavior. Because every decision we make is based on what we believe will give us the greatest advantage or disadvantage to what's highest on our values. And our values filter how we perceive the world, make decisions in the world, and act in the world. So all of our behaviors revolves around our values. And whatever's highest on our value, we are spontaneously inspired from within to do. It's the chief aim, as Napoleon Hill called, the telos, or the primary objective.
Yes.
And whatever's lower on our values, we require external motivation. It's more extrinsic.
Sure.
And we need motivation from the outside to get us to do. So if we're doing something that's meaningful, it's inspiring, that's fulfilling, that's highest on our values, we build momentum. And we do extraordinary things, and we expand our space and time horizons, and we achieve more. And if we don't, and we inject the values of others and try to live by other people's values and not our own highest values, we tend to shrink and procrastinate and hesitate, frustrate, and go in the other direction. So wisdom is knowing what your highest value is, and prioritizing your life. If you don't fill your day with high priority actions that inspire you, it will fill up with low priority distractions that don't.
Sure.
And if you don't pursue challenges that inspire you, your life will fill up with challenges that don't. And one builds wellness and well-being and wholeness and integration and authenticity and an inspired and making a difference that's unique. And the other makes you become part of the mass herd of mediocrity.
Yeah, awesome. So axiology, the study of values, and it pretty much fundamentally decides what you choose to focus your time on, whether you're inspired or disempowered. So what's the most often, the question you get asked most often, and how does the study of values impact and influence the outcome to that question?
Well, the basic question is, what am I here for? Why am I here, kind of thing. What's my purpose in life? Well, your purpose is an expression of your highest value. Your identity ontologically revolves around your highest value. And your purpose, your teleology, your final end product, you might say, what the end in mind, the final cause, as Aristotle describes, is the highest value. Yes. So when the Delphic Oracle said, know thyself, that's the highest value. Be thyself, that's fulfilling the highest value. You'll love yourself, because you will, because you have a fulfilled life.
Yes.
So that's still a truth today.
Awesome.
So the highest question is how is whatever I'm experiencing today, no matter what it is, whether it feels supportive or challenging, how is it helping me fulfill my highest value? It's one of the greatest questions a person asks every day.
Yeah, awesome. Cool, thank you for that. That's awesome. So the difference between, you talk a lot about the difference between your true values and fantasy values, or things that we've perceived to be our highest values. What's the difference between the two, and how are they both formed?
Well, if I ask people, if I'm standing in front of thousands of people and ask them, how many of you want to be financially independent? Everybody puts their hand up.
Yes.
I mean, I've literally been in front of 10,000 people and asked that, and there's been 10,000 hands up. And I said, now, it's interesting. Look around the room. There's 10,000 hands up. What's the percentage of people that make financial independence? And the answer is really under 1%.
Yes.
So that means that one of you out of every 100 is probably going to become financially independent. So that means that 99% of you probably have fantasies, unrealistic expectations, delusions that you're going to be financially independent. And what's the difference is that they have different sets of values. The hierarchy of your values dictates your financial destiny. If you have a higher value on buying consumables that depreciate in value, instead of buying assets that appreciate in value, then you're going to be working your whole life for money as a slave, instead of having it work for you as a master. So your hierarchy of values are crucial to knowing whether or not you're going to be financially independent. So you have a choice: either calm down the fantasy that you're going to be financially independent and accept that you like to buy immediate gratifying behavior and goods, or have long-term vision and patience and start investing and saving and investing and building your wealth If you have the highest value, the top 3 values or top 4 values, one of them is wealth building, you'll get there. If it's not, you'll keep spending your money on what is highest on your value.
Yes.
So that means that many people have a fantasy about what they value, even though they all put their hands up. And I ask people, one of the signs of having a fantasy is that you end up having internal anger and aggression. You tend to blame and feel like you betray yourself and sabotage.
Yes.
You tend to criticize and challenge yourself. You feel despaired and depressed. You want to escape and exit your life. You feel frustrated and grouchy. The ABCDEFGs of negativity are a symptom of setting a goal that's not really high on your value, and then having the repercussions as a feedback to let you know you're not being authentic in your objectives.
Yes, awesome. My next question was going to be, what are some examples of some misalignments in values? But just there's lots that are coming to mind straight away. There's the finances, there's health. So someone tries to lose weight, but they don't really care about losing weight. So they try, but then it's not aligned with their highest values. So they keep putting effort out, they don't achieve it, and they wonder why, and then they get depressed, frustrated, angry, and they,
Well, we just had a meeting last night on that very topic with a group that's got one of the larger weight loss systems in the world.
Yes.
And they want us to bring our methods into it. And it's interesting because what people say, I pay very little attention to. What people do, I spend a lot of attention on.
Yes.
Because your life demonstrates your values. Your words rarely do. And many people don't know themselves because what they're doing is as Kohlberg says, that most people subordinate to mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers, small communities or larger communities of people with herd, and try to fit in and please people instead of be authentic to themselves and be transcendent to the herd mentality. And so what happens is they don't know their own values. I always say when I do the breakthrough experience, which I do 43 times a year, I have people come in and says, I don't know what my purpose is. And I said, your life demonstrates your purpose every day.
Yes.
The reason why you don't know it is because you inject the values of others that you're subordinating to and comparing yourself to. And when you filter, you inject all those values, you cloud the clarity of your own mission, which is your highest value that's trying to express itself. So the real truth is your life is demonstrating it, but you're expecting it to be something it's not, and thinking somehow you're not clear, and then you don't want to admit what's true because you think it should be this. So when you hear imperative language like shoulds and ought tos and supposed tos and got tos and have tos and must, that's a sign you've injected values of other people.
Yes.
Because you never should yourself from your own values.
Yeah.
You just say, this is what I would love to do and pursue it.
Yes, definitely. It's funny. It's just a spiraling down effort.
People sometimes, if we sit in the shadows of people instead of standing on the shoulders of giants, we're going to keep imploding instead of inspiring.
Yes. And I love the quote that what you do speaks so loudly that I can't even hear what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that quote, and I feel like that's...
I have a lot of people say, oh, I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight while they're eating.
What? They've got a burger in their mouth. Yeah. And they're saying it at the same time.
I'm always amazed at it because the unconscious motives from our subconscious mind are constantly trying to bring us back into equilibrium and bring us back to authenticity.
Yes.
But so what we're not doing is we're not knowing what our real motives are.
Yes.
We think we want financial independence. What we really want is the lifestyles of the rich and famous with immediate gratification, spending our money.
Yes. So that's what the values are.
I just an hour ago, not even an hour ago, I received a list of. I asked a woman who wanted to change her values so she could build wealth in her life. I made her ask and write 200 benefits of building a business that serves people.
Yes.
Because she was fantasizing to get money without doing a service.
Sure.
So I wrote it out. I had to do 200 benefits, and I explained to her in advance that these benefits are actually benefit of building the business, not spending money.
Yes.
So she sent me 200 benefits of building a business. 3 were about building the business. I could travel the world. I could have a nice car.
Yes.
It's all about consuming and about spending money. And so I rewrote.
So that was showing her values a lot there.
That's showing what her real values are. So I rewrote back and I said, none of these values will build your wealth. They'll all spend your money, which is what you're doing.
Yes.
So I gave her examples, 15 samples of what I meant by building a business to help her realize that. Unless she has a value on that, it's not going to happen.
Awesome. That's such a great example and such perfect timing as well. So there is so many people out there. They've all got different alignment of values. They all want to achieve something different. But I can imagine there are so many people that have a fantasy about an outcome that they want, and they've got fantasy values around that. The real question that I have is, how do you determine and help people distinguish between whether they should follow or change their values to meet their goals, or whether they should change their goals to meet their values?
Well,
what advice would you give to them?
Well, first I have them find out what their life demonstrates.
Yes.
because many people get addicted to other people's lives.
Yes.
And they get a fantasy, and they get dopamine and serotonin rushes, and they confuse that with being inspired.
Yes.
Just like people confuse infatuation with love. Same kind of dynamic. So the first thing I do is have them find out what their values are, and it's usually a little bit startling to them because they go, oh, no wonder my life is the way it is. Now I know why I'm doing what I'm doing and making the decision I'm doing. Because they have this delusion about what it's supposed to be, what it should be, what it ought to be, they think it is. And then actually when they look at what it is, they go, oh, no wonder I'm making those decisions and doing those things, because that's what really is valuable to me. And then they may look at that and they go, well, I realize right now that I'm making sure I don't have a relationship, or I'm making sure I don't have wealth, because my highest value is spending or focusing on business, but not family or something. And then they have to decide, and they have a decision. Either they can set goals that match that and fulfill their lives that way, or they can change their values. Our lives, our values are being changed constantly. I use this analogy to try to make a context of it.
Great.
Imagine you're a 10-year-old girl and you're at a school and you've been asked to sing a solo. And you're in elementary school, and you're 4th grade. And you're preparing for it, and you're singing it, and you're reciting it, and you're getting ready for it. And then you're up there on the stage by yourself. 400 people are in the auditorium, and you sing angelic. You sing flawless. You sing with a beautiful voice. And people are in tears. At the end, they stand and give you a standing ovation. And they give you flowers at the end. And they come up and hug you, and they take pictures of you, and all kinds of things. Well, in all probability, when you're done with that, you're probably going to sing again.
Sure.
But if you go up there and all of a sudden you sing off key, and people go, oh my God, it's terrible. Oh, shut her up. And they throw things. And then you run off the stage and you hide and you don't want to see anybody, you're probably not going to sing again. So certain feedback mechanisms of pleasure or pain can tweak values throughout our life. And just as we can passively find out what that's going to do and just guess, we can also actively stack up pleasures and pains and benefits and drawbacks and advantages and disadvantages to values and raise them up or lower them down on a value sheet. So we can readjust them, but it's not just intellectually analyzing, go, okay, I'm going to make this now my value. It's literally stacking up associations in the brain. So the brain has neural pathways, neuroplastically, that go in the direction of those actions.
Yes.
And that takes some concentrated stacking of associations to do that. I've developed a method for that. I do it in the breakthrough experience. So we give people that option. Either set goals that match your values, or alter some of the values to match the goals you say you want.
Yeah. So in that moment in time, would you say that you try to get people in the most heart-centered, amazing version of themselves to help make a conscious decision of what direction they want to go down?
Well, many people are subordinating. I have an exercise in the breakthrough experience where we take people that we look up to, that we admire, and we find out what traits, actions, or inactions that they display or demonstrate that we most admire. And then we go and find out where and when do we demonstrate those in our own life, and stack up those where and whens where we do it, and who we do it to, and who sees us do it, until we're confidently certain that we have that trait, action or inaction, 100% to the same degree, quantitatively and qualitatively. The moment they're equal, that person, instead of being on a pedestal, are now equal. We've raised our playing field. We no longer inject their values into our life, and we give permission for us to be our own values. The only thing that stops people from living truthfully to their own values is the comparison to other people that they put on pedestals, and the subordination to them and the injection of their values that clouds the clarity of their own value. And so I do is I take and find out who those admired people are, and we bring them off the pedestal and bring them back up and level the playing field, and that gives them permission to honor their values, and it breaks the fantasies of these other people that they're comparing their life to. That allows them to make that decision wisely from the heart.
Awesome. So so they're not going to have clouded judgment of what their values truly are. They can make a honest, authentic decision based on the fact that they are now grounded and they're not influenced by external people.
When you're grateful for who you are as you are, you make the wisest decision about what change you're going to make.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's perfectly displayed. You talk a lot about, in business as well, values being a massive thing. You have to be aligned to the values of the business that you're pursuing, but you also need to know the values of your target audience in order to communicate effectively to them. And one statement that I am just in love with is to do with marketing is sell them what they want and then give them what they need. So what's a really great example of a business, and this can just be a it doesn't have to be a real business, it can be just a made-up example, that has aligned values from the entrepreneur to the business and aligned values from the business in alignment with their target audience? And then what do you think is a bad example of that? Just so any business owners that are watching can kind of dial in and go, okay, I might be out of alignment here.
Well, there's a principle, I have to develop that, because when you're living by your highest value,
yes,
you're willing to embrace pain and pleasure in the pursuit of your highest value.
Sure.
You're willing to embrace support and challenge, ease and difficulties, the pairs of opposites. That's why leaders can manage paradoxes of pairs of opposites, because they're able to handle resiliently and with fitness and adaptability, those two. So if you're setting a goal that's balanced, you're more likely to achieve it than if you're setting a fantasy that's one-sided. It's not obtainable. Now, when you have things support your values, you tend to be excited. You tend to have things that challenge it. You tend to inflate and deflate. Whenever you inflate yourself and get yourself into pride, you start to think you're greater than you are. And whenever you deflate, you start to think you're lesser than you are. If you meet another individual and you think you're greater than them, you tend to want to project your values onto them, and you're not going to listen to them. You're going to have an alternating monologue where you're speaking, they're not listening. If that's your customer, you're not going to meet their needs. You're going to project assumptions of what the market wants instead of actually find out what the market is looking for. If you're the other way and you minimize yourself and put them on a pedestal, you're going to inject their values into your life and try to sacrifice what's important to you to be with them. When you do, you'll give away at the negotiation table and lose your profits. Neither one of those lead to profits. So anytime you have inequity and non-equanimity inside you, and you exaggerate or minimize yourself, you undermine business. There's a model called equity theory. And equity theory says that we must strive for a balancing act between us and our employees and our customers. Anytime we puff ourselves up or deflate ourselves, we get symptoms in the business to try to get us back into equanimity. Once we have that, we then care enough about our employees, care enough about our customers to meet all their needs. So everybody's inspired to want to come to the table and have a sustainable, fair exchange in a transaction. If we go through there and we find equity like that, we maximize our growth of our company. So what a lot of entrepreneurs do, they get us an idea, they're elated about the idea, they get puffed up about it, they assume the world wants whatever they want, they go out, they don't test the market, find out if there's a demand, and then they go and push that and they spend money on it and they keep infusing capital into trying to sell something that nobody wants. And so you're pushing uphill. It's wise to find out what is inspiring to you, what you want to bring to the world. It's wise to find out what the world is looking for in search engines and finding out what people are needing and finding out where they overlap in a Vesica Pisces overlap of two circles. And in that area is your niche. If you find that, you're inspired to get up and go do it, and you want to tap dance to work, they can't wait to buy your service. Now you have supply and demand that causes this, and you have equanimity.
Yeah, beautiful. So that little Venn diagram with that cross section and that sweet spot right in the middle.
That's where you maximize your potential and profits.
Yeah. That's so true, because we see it so often. Anyone that's in the entrepreneurial space and goes to events, they're those people that are so kind of elated with this idea, and they've got all this, they've puffed out their chest, a little bit of ego even, and they're just so infatuated with this idea that they don't have the opportunity to look back and get feedback.
To see if people really want it.
Yeah, but then I also see people that are so far down and all they want to do is test the market and find the gap, and they're not aligned with their highest value. So
they're not inspired to go to work. If you do work that makes money, that fills everybody's needs but has no meaning, you'll end up taking your money and go do addictive behaviors. Meaning is more important than people realize. Because without feeling like you have meaning in your work, nobody goes to work for the sake of a company. They go to work to fulfill their highest values and meaning. If they don't feel they have meaning, they go into the amygdala part of the brain and they look for immediate gratification to compensate for an unfulfilled life. So it's important to meet needs that also fulfill yours. Having that win-win is your vocation and vacation become the same.
Yeah, wow. And that's what you've got. Your vocation is your vacation. You're traveling around the world all the time, which is amazing.
Yeah, I found that when I do seminars, I have 75 courses that I teach. Wow. Some, when I launch new seminars, sometimes they just go boom, and it really nails the market, sometimes less. And so it's a feedback, constant feedback. Your market gives you feedback about you, and you give feedback to yourself. And so if you find and tweak it until you go, they want it, you want it, now you got it. It's a refinement process as you go.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing it. So what I want to do is like really cement this idea of the importance behind finding your true values, because there'll still be a lot of people watching this, and including a previous version of me that would be ignorant to this idea, and they're like, yeah, finding your own values. Can you kind of almost sell the audience on the the before and after of Dr. John Demartini. So when you first were out of alignment when you were younger, and then you found out what your values were and then made that transition, whether it was consciously or subconsciously, what was the before and after? We can see the after now, which is amazing, but what was before and what was after, and what's your life different? How's it different now?
Well, I don't want to paint a bleak picture, really, because even though I was a teenager in the streets and things like that, I don't want that to come across that that's, that was awful, terrible, et cetera, because there were some amazing moments during those times.
And you surfed all day, every day,
so you had a blast.
Yeah.
I surfed. I was a free-spirited kid. I mean, I met some amazing people on the streets, and I got to do pretty amazing things. I don't want to say that that's all bleak and then this is all good. I just say that there was pains and pleasures at that part of my life, and pains and pleasures that I have today. I have pains today achieving all the things that I want to do, and the time frames and the schedules, and trying to get all the things I want to get done. So I don't want to paint such a polarity there that would be unfair, untrue. I'd rather give people a reality check. But I can just say that now that I'm consciously aware of what I'm inspired by, instead of kind of unconsciously, it makes a difference. I now know what my values are. I'm clear about them. I get to structure my life around them. I learned from Mary Kay to write down the 6 or 7 highest priority action steps every single day, and act on those. And that raises your self-worth whenever you're doing the highest priorities. If you do and you delegate lower priority things, and you give yourself permission to go and free yourself up to do what's meaningful, you have a meaningful and inspired life. You cannot have an inspired life if you're doing low priority, desperate things. And you can't have an inspired life unless you're serving somebody to earn a fair exchanged income, to be able to pay for the delegations to liberate you from the lower priority things. So the universe rewards people that care enough about people with equity, and serve people that serves themselves. The universe is set up in such a way that we can't really be guided away from what is going to work.
So I believe, and I do a lot of gratitude work as well, and I notice the days that I do the gratitude work, I feel amazing, and there's more upside than there is downside. But then there's days when I won't do it, and it'll be a little bit less. So being in control of your emotions and being able to develop yourself to where you are now, do you believe that there is more upside than downside now that you're in alignment with all these things and you're on that path? Or do you still believe it is an equilibrium and there's always the exact same amount of up as there is down in terms of emotions?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because I don't know how much time I have, but I can share a story that might be useful.
Sure. After you go through this, I'm just going to rapid fire a couple of questions for like 10-second answers, and then we'll be...
When I was 28 to 30 years old, I did a research project on whether or not I could stay positive. I recited between 600 and 1,000 positive affirmations a day. I timed every 4 hours and clocked every 4 hours and stopped and asked how was I doing in each of the 7 areas of life during that time. And it was a very strong ritual. And I documented after 2 years of doing that, of documenting 4 times a day exactly how it was affected me spiritually, mentally, career, financial, family, social, and physical. I found out that all the ups and the downs balanced. So I gave up at age 30 the illusion of one-sidedness. And I found out that the second we synthesize it, as Will Durant in his Story of Civilization and Story of Philosophy, the second we have the dialectic come to a synthesis, we make a quantum leap. So I'm not going up or down, happy or sad. I go to a point where I go into equanimity, where I make quantum jumps and growth. So I'm not interested in going high, I'm not interested in going low, I'm interested in centering myself and getting present, where I grow the most. And I accomplish that. So I can't say that I have highs without lows, I have both. But I try to neutralize them where they're less, the volatilities are mitigated and the centeredness is maximized throughout the time.
Yeah, so do you believe it's just you coming to terms with the fact that there are ups and downs that put you at peace, and that's where gratitude and love comes from?
Well, gratitude and love is that perfect equanimity point.
Yeah, awesome.
It's poised, not poisoned. When you're in equanimity, you have poise, presence, power, purpose, priority, productivity. Awesome. And when you're not, you're oscillating with vicissitudes. And we have moments like that, we all do. But I mitigate the extremes, because I found that extreme elation or extreme depression is a bipolar state. I'd rather be centered and rather be focused and prioritized. And I do keep a record of my gratitudes. But I find that my gratitude only occurs not when I'm up. My gratitude occurs when I see the hidden order in the pairs of opposites at the same time.
Yeah, so it's the awareness of the fact that you do have
Both of them at the same time. And when I see that, I feel the presence of love. I really believe there's an intelligence in the universe guiding us to live there.
Yeah, awesome. So if you're having a bad day, you're just going, you know what? I'm actually grateful for this feeling. That's where you feel at peace, and that's where you feel.
Well, if I see a down day, it's because I ask myself, so who did I serve? What did I accomplish? How did I achieve things, etc.? And if I have this day that I think I'm having a high, well, who did I forget to call? What did I procedure I've overlooked? And I govern myself. If you don't govern yourself from the inside, you become governed from the outside. Wow. One, you're a master, the other, you're a slave. I'd much rather govern myself from the inside and before I go into extremes than I would to have to do. Your intuition is attempting to bring your unconscious conscious to balance out the equation, to liberate you from the bondages of all the emotions that distract you, and stay centered on the thing that's your inspired mission. Take no credit, take no blame, just keep focused on the chief aim. The name of the game is thank you, I love you.
Amazing. Well said. So just to wrap this up really quickly, I've got two more questions. One is, what does Dr. John Demartini do the moment that you open your eyes in the morning, laying in bed, to when you start the day? What's that ritual look like for you?
Well, usually I'm in a hotel, and usually I get a call to be woken up. I have a ritual, kind of a set of affirmations that I run in my mind. And the first one is, I'm a genius and I apply my wisdom. That's been what I do every day. And I have a series of those, and I run through those. And then I think about what I'm grateful for. I like to go through some gratitudes that I went home with that night before to review that. And I try to get a tear of gratitude before I get out of bed.
Beautiful. Okay,
then I'll get up and do some push-ups and things, rituals, and shower.
The gun's gone. Cool. I'd love to finish. All your answers have been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. I'd love to finish with one little more lighthearted question, which is, what is the most embarrassing moment that you've had on stage? It was one point when I first started running seminars, and I ran 12 seminars in 10 weeks just to get my vision and mission started with Winning International, what I run right now. And there was one night where I was feeling super sick. I think I had some food poisoning before, and the last hour and a half, I just started feeling sicker and sicker, and I had to sit down on stage because I couldn't stand up. And then at the end, I managed to wrap up, and people were coming up to me to try to hug, and I had to run off to the toilets. Didn't make it, munted everywhere. It was disgusting. What was the most embarrassing moment that you had?
Well, I don't know about embarrassing. I don't know if I could say things as much as embarrassing up there. I've had some pretty funny things up there that are kind of crazy. I was at a conference one time, and I was in the wrong conference up on stage. So that must have been the right conference.
How long did it take for you to realize this? Had they all realigned their values?
Well, there was two conferences across the hall from each other, and the lady saw me coming in with a microphone. Yes. And so, as I didn't know, so she escorted me in and put me back up on stage. And I was told this particular topic, but that was across the hall at another stage. And I went up there, and within a second, I started realizing that I'm on the wrong stage. And I thought it was the most hilarious thing, and I just had some fun with it. And I said, I think I'm supposed to be next door. Thank you very much for my presentation this morning. And the whole place was in hysterics. But then I went over there, where were you? And the other guy didn't go over there. He was sitting in there going, what's happened? I'm supposed to be on stage. So those are kind of embarrassing, humiliating, funny.
Funny. Sounds more funny than anything. Thank you so much for your time. I'll give you a big hug. Thank you so much. Yeah.